Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Eruvin Daf Tzadi Vav begins in the middle of a machlokes between Rabbi Meir, who's a Tana Kama, and Rabbi Gamliel about how many pairs of tefillin you're allowed to wear at once on Shabbos when you're trying to transport them from the public domain where they'll be disgraced into a private area. The Gemara is in the middle of listing 5 different explanations of what the machlokes is about. We have 3 left to go. Then the Gemara will try to figure out who is the Tana who holds that there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. The Gemara will try 5 or 6 different brises, which may potentially hold that way. The Gemara will reject them all except the last one. And then the Gemara will get into a discussion about finding tcheles in the street and whether or not you're allowed to assume that they were made l'shem tzitzis. So first of all, we had seen this in machlokes. We know that if you find tefillin in the street on Shabbos, you're supposed to bring them in by wearing them in. The Tana Kama, who's Rabbi Meir, had said that you're only allowed to wear one at a time, and Rabbi Gamliel said you're allowed to wear 2 at a time. The Gemara was trying to understand what the machlokes is. In these last 3 explanations here, we're understanding that the problem is Bal Tosef. If you wear 2 pairs of tefillin at a time, you're doing an Isser of Bal Tosef. We don't want you to do an Isser of Bal Tosef, and therefore we're not going to allow you to wear 2 pairs of tefillin at one time. This is working with the understanding that if you're wearing tefillin on Shabbos, it is a mitzvah. So your first pair that you're wearing is a mitzvah. The second pair that you're wearing is not a mitzvah, it's Bal Tosef, and therefore you can't do it. Now, in the first answer on the daf here, the Gemara is saying that the machlokes is: can you do Bal Tosef? Are you violating Bal Tosef if you don't have intent to do the mitzvah? Let's say you do a mitzvah, you're not intending to do it. Can you just do something which is a mitzvah action, but you're not intending to do the mitzvah? Could we say, well, you're doing extra mitzvahs? I'm not doing extra mitzvahs. I'm just doing a mitzvah action. I'm not intending to do the mitzvah. So according to Rabbi Gamliel, that wouldn't be called Bal Tosef. You're not trying to do the mitzvah. You do not have intent. And therefore you could wear the second pair of tefillin. It's not Bal Tosef. According to Rabbi Meir, you can't, because the fact that you're doing a mitzvah action, putting tefillin on, is enough to be Bal Tosef even if you don't have intent to do the mitzvah. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you another explanation. Maybe really everybody agrees that normally if you do a mitzvah action without intent, it could be Bal Tosef. Here, the issue is something else. Here, it's not even the right time for tefillin. You're not supposed to wear a tefillin on Shabbos. So, if you're doing without intent to do the mitzvah, and it's not in the right time, it's total nonsense what you're doing. So that wouldn't be called Bal Tosef at all. That's what Rabbi Meir would hold. Rabbi Gamliel would say, no, even though it's the wrong time, still, without intent, it still counts as if you're doing the action of a mitzvah, and that is an Isser of Bal Tosef, and therefore we would not allow you to do that. That's Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Gamliel would say we do, because there's no problem, it doesn't count as Bal Tosef at all. Says the Gemara, hold on a second. If you're going to count Bal Tosef, according to Rabbi Meir, even when you're wearing it when you're not supposed to, without intent, so then how can you even wear the first pair of tefillin? And we're saying now that you're not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos. But if you do, even without intending to do the mitzvah, it does count as if you did a ma'aseh mitzvah, an action of a mitzvah, and Rabbi Meir says that's also so that even the first pair of tefillin you can't wear. And also, anybody who sleeps in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, it's not sukkahs. He's sleeping in the sukkah during the wrong time. So that should be Bal Tosef also. He's doing an extra mitzvah that he's not supposed to do. So, we know that's not the halacha. The halacha is midrabanan. You are supposed to sleep in the sukkah. At least that's what it says in the Gemara Masechta Sukkah. Minhagim are possibly different today, but even in Eretz Yisrael, this is referring to where there is no issue of second days. So the Gemara says that these 2 things can't be, and therefore we'll reject this last pshat. It cannot be that if you're doing an action and it's the wrong time, there's no mitzvah, and you don't have intent to do the mitzvah, we can't call that Bal Tosef at all, and that can't be what the machlokes is about. Okay, the Gemara leaves this discussion, and now the Gemara goes to a discussion about whether there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos or not. The Gemara we had discussed earlier, we had one of the choices to what the machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Meir was about, was maybe they're arguing over whether there's a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos or not. So the Gemara says, where do we find an opinion that somebody holds that there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos? So the Gemara tries a few attempts over here. The Gemara first of all says it's Rabbi Akiva in the following brisa. The Brisa discusses a pasuk in Kaddish Likol B'char, which is one of the parshas that's written inside Tefillin. And right after talking about Korban Pesach and talking about Tefillin, it says Vishomarta, and you should watch, you should guard. As a chukah is this law lemoyada, and it's time miyamim yamima, from days to days. So the Gemara says, what does from days to days mean? First of all, yamim v'layla. This means the days and not the nights. You're not supposed to put on tefillin at night. And miyamim, some days, not all days. You're not supposed to put them on Shabbos and on Yantif. This is how Rabbi Yosef Glili understands it. It's referring to tefillin, and it's telling you don't put them on at night and don't put them on Shabbos and Yantif. Says Rabbi Akiva, this whole entire pasuk is not talking about tefillin. It's talking about Korban Pesach. Therefore, there is no source from here that you can't wear tefillin at night, and there's also no source that you can't wear tefillin on Shabbos. So Rabbi Akiva then would seem to be the one who says that there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. So Gemara says that can't be. First of all, how could he say that this pasuk is talking about Korban Pesach? We have a Mishnah that says that Korban Pesach is a mitzvah aseh. It's a positive commandment you're supposed to do. And Mila is also mitzvah aseh. But this pasuk clearly says Vishamarta, you should guard. And we have a statement which we've seen from Rabbi of the name of Rabbi Lai. Anytime it says Hishamar, it says guard, or it says pen, be careful, lest, or it says al, or it says do not. Any of these things all count as a mitzvah's loisaseh. So if this pasuk is talking about Korban Pesach, that would mean that Korban Pesach is a mitzvah's loisaseh, because it says guard yourself. So how could Rabbi Akiva hold that this is talking about Korban Pesach? It can't be, because then Korban Pesach should be a mitzvah's loisaseh, and we know that it is clearly an aseh, as we quoted in the Brisa before. The Gemara says, no. When we say the rule that anytime you say the words guard yourself, that's a mitzvah's loisaseh, that's only if the Torah says guard yourself and it's referring to something which is a mitzvah's loisaseh. So the guard yourself is adding another loisaseh. But if it says guard yourself about an aseh, so then it's an aseh. It doesn't make it a loisaseh. Meaning the guard yourself doesn't define that it's a loisaseh, it adds on another loisaseh, but it is whatever it applies to. So there's another problem here, is you can't tell me that Rabbi Akiva holds you're supposed to wear tefillin on Shabbos, or that Shabbos is a time for tefillin. You would get a mitzvah for wearing tefillin on Shabbos, because we have a clear brisa where Rabbi Akiva says that there is no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. He learns it out of somewhere else. He says this pasuk was talking about Korban Pesach, but he learns it out of the fact that it says that tefillin is an ice, it's a sign, and you only put on tefillin if you're in need of a sign. You're in need of a sign that you are with Hashem. Shabbos, nobody needs a sign. Shabbos itself is a sign. Therefore, you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos. So therefore, this can't be Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva cannot be the one who says that there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. He clearly says that there isn't. Okay, we have another source. This source is from somebody who has tefillin at night. The question is he allowed to leave them on, or is he allowed to put them on? So the Brisa says, Rabbi Nassan says he is allowed to leave them on or put them on even at night. Night is the time for tefillin. Yoinason Hakitoidi says, no, you can't have tefillin on at night. Night is not a time for tefillin. Problem about Taisif if you have them on. So Gemara says, so now you see that Rabbi Nosson says that tefillin can be put on at night. Well, the source for tefillin not applying at night and not applying Shabbos is the same pasuk. It's from Miyamim Yamima. Yamim v'laylaylais, Miyamim and not Kala Yamim. So you see, obviously this Tana doesn't hold of it. If he doesn't hold that you're allowed to have tefillin at night, if he doesn't hold that you can't have tefillin at night, meaning he says that you could, then he also must not hold that you can't have tefillin on Shabbos. And therefore he is the one that says that you are allowed to put on tefillin on Shabbos. So the Gemara says maybe not. Maybe he'll say Rabbi Akiva. Maybe he holds that this entire pasuk about Yom Yamim is talking about Korban Pesach, and the reason you can't have tefillin on Shabbos, he agrees you can't have tefillin on Shabbos, like Rabbi Akiva, who says that it's an ice, it's a sign, you don't need a sign on Shabbos. However, that does not apply to the nighttime. And during the nighttime, therefore he holds it is a time of wearing tefillin, and it wouldn't be a proof at all. Okay, the Gemara says we'll try another brisa. And this is talking about the fact that we find women who wear tefillin. And the Gemara is going to say, obviously, somebody who holds that women are allowed to wear tefillin must hold that it's not a mitzvah sasesha as man grama. Mitzvah sasesha as man grama is a mitzvah you're only allowed to do certain times. Generally, women aren't supposed to wear tefillin, or they don't have a mitzvah of tefillin, because it's a mitzvah sasesha as man grama. It's limited to times. It doesn't apply on Shabbos. It doesn't apply at night. If you find me somebody who says that women are allowed to put on tefillin, then obviously he holds that it is a mitzvah sasesha ein hazman grama. It's not limited to times, which means it does apply at night and it does apply on Shabbos. So what's the brisa? The brisa lists women who did certain mitzvahs. The brisa says that Michal, the daughter of Shaul, put on tefillin and the Chachamim did not protest. And the wife of Yoina Hanavi went to the Beis HaMikdash to do Aliyah L'Regel, and the women and the Chachamim did not protest to that also. So you see clearly here that from the fact that they didn't protest against Michal, that they held that she was supposed to put on tefillin, because it's not a mitzvah saseh as man groma, and therefore that proves that they must hold that tefillin apply at night and b'Shabbos, and therefore that's the source, that's the opinion. It says that tefillin applies on Shabbos. So Gemara says, not so fast. It doesn't necessarily mean that they said that women are supposed to put on tefillin. It doesn't mean that they held that it's a mitzvah to say she'ein hazman grama. It could just be that the Chachamim said that women are allowed to do a mitzvah that they're not obligated to do. Therefore, if she puts on tefillin, they don't have a problem with it. They really, meaning we tell you they hold that tefillin is a mitzvah to say hazman grama, and therefore it doesn't apply during the night and it doesn't apply on Shabbos. And women therefore have no mitzvah to put it on. But this opinion just holds women are allowed to do whatever they want, even if they are not obligated in the mitzvah, they're still allowed to do the mitzvah. And we see such a discussion about the concept of doing smicha on karbonos. Women don't have to do smicha on karbonos. There's a pasuk that says adam ki akav mikem. It excludes women; they're not obligated to lean on their carbon. However, Rabbi Yossi says that women are allowed to if they want to. So this opinion here could also say that the women are allowed to wear tefillin if they want to. And the Gemara says, actually, I will prove to you that that's what's going on over here, because look at the second half of the Brisa. The Brisa said that they didn't protest against the wife of Yaina Hanavi who went to be Oile Regel. You're going to tell me that they didn't protest because they thought that she was Chayiv, because they thought that it was a mitzvah to say She'ein Hazman Grama. Alila Regel definitely only applies on the Regel. It can't apply any other time. It's called Alila Regel. So obviously, the reason they weren't protesting, both in this case and in the case before about the tefillin, is because they said that women can do it if they aren't obligated, they're allowed to do it. Okay. Fine, we'll try another Tana. Maybe we'll find another Brisa. Then we have a Tana here that says that if you find tefillin in the street, you're allowed to bring them in one pair at a time. And here it adds that a man and a woman are both allowed to bring in tefillin at a time. It also adds that it doesn't matter if it's used tefillin or if it's a new tefillin, which might not necessarily be tefillin. As we said yesterday, it could be tefillin that is not real tefillin, it's just some type of kameah made to look like tefillin. Anyway, so this opinion is Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, the Brisa says. Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda said women are allowed to bring tefillin in from the street. So Gemara says, well, if you're letting women bring tefillin in from the street, it must be that the mitzvah applies to them. They can't bring in tefillin. If they're not relevant to the mitzvah, then it would be carrying. The difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is about the new tefillin. Rabbi Yehuda says new tefillin are forbidden, but they both agree that women are allowed to do it. So you see that women do have the mitzvah of tefillin, in which case it must be a mitzvah to say she'ein hazman grama, and it must apply on Shabbos and at night as well. And so that's our source. So the Gemara says again, what's the proof? Maybe it just means that women are allowed to. It's mitzvah to say hazman grama. Women are not obligated in it, but they're allowed to do what they're obligated, just like they're allowed to lean on karbanis. So the Gemara says, no, it can't be, because this is Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, and I will prove to you that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda hold that any mitzvah that women are not obligated in, they should not be doing. And therefore, if we're letting them wear tefillin to bring it inside, it must be that they are obligated in the mitzvah of tefillin. And it's a mitzvah to say she'ein hazman grama, which means it applies in Shabbos as well. Now, where do you see that Rabbi Meir holds that women should not do a mitzvah that they're not supposed to? Rabbi Meir says, as far as blowing shofar on Rosh Hashanah, so you can let children play with a shofar, you don't have to worry about b'taisa. You should not let women play with it. You should not let women, practice with it, because they'll be blowing extra klelis on Rosh Hashanah, which is bal taisif. That means that he's saying, since women are not obligated in the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar, they shouldn't be doing it. It would be Baal Taisif to do it, and you see that he's holding that women are forbidden from doing mitzvahs that they're not obligated in. Now that's a Stam Mishnah, it doesn't give a name. We know Stam Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, so that's a source for him. Where do you see that Rabbi Yehuda holds that women shouldn't do a mitzvah that they're not obligated in? So the Gemara quotes a Mishnah about leaning on karbanos. The Gemara quotes that Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon say that women can lean on karbanos, but Rabbi Yehuda, who's the author of the Stam Brisa, says that women should not be leaning on their karbanos. This is not any Brisa, this is a Sifra. We have a rule, Stam Sifra, Rabbi Yehuda. It's a Brisa in Taras Kohanim, which discusses it's the brises of halachas on Chumash Vayikra, and therefore it's Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore we have clearly established Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir both hold that women should not be doing a mitzvah that they're not obligated in. Therefore, in this brisa that says that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir say that women can wear tefillin, and they must be holding that women are allowed to wear tefillin because it's a mitzvah to say she'ein hazman grama, which means tefillin applies all time, even Shabbos, even at night, and that is our source for an opinion that the mitzvah of tefillin applies on Shabbos as well as during the week. Okay, we had just seen a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir whether we have to be concerned if you find newly looking tefillin in the street that they may not be tefillin at all, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to save them. Do we have to be concerned that maybe they're just kameas, maybe they're just amulets that are made to look like tefillin? So that was a machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara is going to figure out what that machlokes is about, and this comes at the end of a discussion about something else. The something else is finding tcheles in the street. So you find tcheles, that's wool, that's colored blue, the type that we have on tzitzis, they had in the days of Chazal. And the question is, can you assume that this coloring of tcheles was done l'shem tzitzis, and therefore you're allowed to use it for tcheles? Or should we assume that it's not necessarily done l'shem tcheles, maybe it was done because somebody wanted a blue colored shirt, and therefore you can't use it for tzitzis? So the Gemara says as follows. Rabbi Elazar says, if you find tcheles in the street, so if it's made as strings, you could assume that it's for tzitzis, and if it's just a bundle of wool, then you have to assume, not necessarily, you have to be afraid that maybe it was made for clothing. Stop. So Gemara says, hold on a second, strings could also be used for clothing. People make threads and they weave clothing out of it, so why do you assume that it's for tzitzis? So the Gemara says, no, we're talking about where you took two strings and you twisted them together. And that tzitzis is made out of twisted threads. Clothing you don't usually weave out of twisted threads; you weave it out of single threads. So Gemara says not necessarily. The clothing could have fringes on it. It could have an edging around the edge that's made from these fancy twisted strings. We still find the tassels like that. So maybe it was just designed to be a tassel for the clothing. So Gemara says, so we're talking about where it was threads that were twisted together and cut to the right length of tzitzis. In order to use that for fringes, it would have to be reattached together. Nobody's going to go through the effort of reattaching them like that, and therefore you can assume that it was made for tzitzis. So Gemara said, right, you're not going to stain tcheles that was cut into tiny pieces like that. So the Gemara says, okay. We have a problem with this. The problem was brought up by Rava. Rava says, we see that we are concerned that if you find tefillin in the street, it might be just a kameya, just an amulet, which was made to look like tefillin. Who's going to go to the pain of making amulets to look like tefillin? Well, whoever would do that would also go to the pain of making his tassels look like tzitzis and attaching them. So if we're concerned for that, we should be concerned for this also, and we should not let you assume that these strings are tcheles strings. So Gemara says Rabbi Zeir wasn't impressed by that argument, and Rabbi Zeir told his son, Ava, go teach this brisa. You find strings that are tcheles, that are twisted, and that are cut to the length of tzitzis, you could assume that they're made for tzitzis l'shema, and you're allowed to use them. So Rava said, just because you go tell your kid to teach the brisa to everybody doesn't make it true. You can't start hanging rings on it just because you say it. I think that there is actually a machlokes as to whether or not people would go to such efforts. As a matter of fact, that's the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda we were discussing earlier. Rabbi Meir has concern that maybe the tefillin are amulets. Rabbi Meir is unconcerned that the tefillin might be amulets if they're new, and Rabbi Yehuda is concerned. Their argument probably is whether a person would go to such efforts to make tefillin, to make amulets look like tefillin or not, and therefore the same machlokes would apply here. Would somebody go to such effort with these strings?
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.